my wedding planning friends, and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, thanks so much for clicking on my video. I'm Emily Summer. I'm a wedding planner based in Montana, and I make weekly videos on wedding planning tips and advice. So today's video, we're going to talk all about wedding flowers and basically every flower arrangement, every type of flower you need to know so that you don't miss a single detail when it comes to getting the flowers for your wedding, as well as help you to understand what exactly you need when it comes to wedding flowers for your wedding, what is necessary, what is not necessary, what is common, what is not as common, and just help you be really prepared when it comes to setting up the consultations with wedding florists. Break it down into the three main categories when it comes to wedding florals, and that is personal flowers, ceremony flowers, and reception flowers. If you don't want to have to remember all of this, I do have a link in the description below where you can have your very own wedding floral checklist. It'll list out everything that I talk about in this video, as well as a little checkbox next to it. So if you're somebody that likes lists and checklists, feel free to click on that link and you can download your free wedding floral checklist. Let's dive on in. Now, when it comes to finding your florist and figuring out your wedding flowers that you want for your wedding, whenever you meet with a wedding florist, typically the consultation meeting is going to go over all the things that we're going to talk about today. So this is just a good kind of precursor to that before you even start to speak to florists, so that you have a general understanding of what you want to have at your wedding, what you want to include, what items are necessary, what items you don't think you really need at your wedding, and give you a baseline of information to be a little bit more prepared when it comes to talking to florists. So like I said, pretty much everything on this list are things that your florist is going to ask you, but just so that you can be overly prepared and anticipate the needs of your florist, here are all the categories and items you will likely have flowers for at your wedding. So starting with personal flowers, this refers to anything that is worn or held, basically. So obviously a bridal bouquet is going to be the number one that pretty much everyone is going to include in their wedding. This is also where I recommend splurging. If you are going to splurge on anything, if you're trying to save money on your wedding flowers, you can have smaller bridesmaids bouquets or go a different route there. There's ways you can kind of minimize your guest table arrangements, centerpieces, that sort of thing. If you're going to spend money on one thing, your bridal bouquet is going to be photographed and featured and seen the most. So not only will it be seen by all of your guests when you're walking down the aisle, it'll be used in a lot of detail photos, it'll be used in your bridal portraits, it'll be used in your bride and groom portraits, it'll be used in your bridal party portraits. So it's used a lot throughout the night, and this is where you want to probably spend more money if you're trying to figure out how to allocate that floral budget. So bridal bouquet. Then you have hair flowers, if that's something you want to have, whether that's a flower crown, or maybe just a hair piece or flowers on a comb, whatever that might be. Include that in your list if you're wanting to have some sort of flowers in your hair. This also goes for bridesmaids. You obviously are going to have bridesmaids bouquets and or some sort of hair flowers for the bridesmaids as well. Then we move into flower girl ring bearer, if that's something that you are having. If you have a flower girl, you're going to need either a flower basket if you plan on having them actually throw petals, so you need to include loose petals, as well as if they, again, if you want to have anything in their hair, whether that's a flower crown or hair pieces, that will need to be included in your floral order as well. And then you also have boutonnieres. If you plan to do boutonnieres, you obviously will have one for the groom. A lot of times the groom and the groomsmen's boutonnieres are pretty similar. A lot of my couples will have maybe just a pop of color on the groomsmen, or maybe slightly bigger or on the groom, or slightly bigger on the grooms than the rest of the groomsmen. It's totally up to you and however you want to do that, but you will likely need a groom's boutonniere and then also groomsmen's boutonnieres. Once you have all of the bridal party covered, the last section of the personal flowers is for your parents. So if you plan on having parents included in the wedding and the processional in any way, you likely want to have flowers for them. So usually this is a corsage for the moms and grandmothers, if that's something that you are including, and then boutonnieres for the fathers and grandfathers or uncles or any other males that are included in the processional. A lot of couples will also choose to have the officiant have a boutonniere as well. Again, that's really a personal preference, so totally up to you there. So that pretty much covers all of the personal flowers section. So then we can move on to ceremony florals. Now, the checklist items for ceremony florals are Obviously, your arch or your altar, however, wherever you are standing and actually physically getting married at, you will likely want either some sort of florals behind you. If you are having an actual physical arch, then they will be likely affixed to that arch, or having ground arrangements on the ground if you aren't having an actual arch, just kind of coming up to designate that space and dress that space up. Then you also have aisle decor, and again, all of these items are totally preference. They're not required by any means. I'm just listing out every basically possible item you could have for flowers at your wedding. Doesn't mean you need them. So aisle decor, if you plan on having flowers down the aisle, or maybe you just want 2 arrangements at the back of the aisle or at the front of the aisle to kind of initiate the aisle decor without having it all along the aisle. That same thing goes for chair decor. Some people will have things hung on the ends of the chairs, or maybe connecting the chairs. You can do shepherd's hooks with little arrangements down the aisle, whatever that looks like to you, some sort of aisle decor and or chair decor. This also goes for if you plan on having, if you want petals in addition to the flower girl petals spread out on the ground, that will need to be included in your order as well, just extra rose petals or flower petals. Another item that qualifies under the ceremony flowers is a welcome table. So if you're having a table with a guest book or a table where guests will put gifts and cards, you probably want to have some sort of floral arrangement to kind of tie in all of these elements as well, and that's a good place to put it. Another place that often includes florals is if you have a welcome sign or a nice sign designating that this is where guests need to go for your wedding, or maybe at the start of your aisle to kind of set the stage for walking into your wedding ceremony. A lot of couples will have some sort of floral arrangement on that wedding sign, or some greenery or some kind of swag. That pretty much wraps up ceremony florals. So now let's talk about reception. Now, reception is where the bulk of your wedding day is going to take place. A lot of your decor will probably be taking place in the reception as opposed to the ceremony, or maybe you're repurposing things from the ceremony to the reception. But the main items for reception flowers are obviously guest tables. So whether this is an actual floral centerpiece, if it's in one singular arrangement on each table, if this is bud vases down the line of the table, if this is garland down the table, however that is, your guest tables is likely the bulk of what your ceremony or what your reception flowers are going to be. Another place is your cake and or dessert table. So this goes for arrangements physically on the table, but also if you are having a cake, setting aside flowers for that cake as well. So whether that is loose blooms that you plan to have your either the person who's dropping off your cake or your florist place onto the cake, or maybe some sprigs of greenery or whatever that might be. Keep in mind florals that go onto the table itself as well as onto your actual desserts. If you're having a cocktail hour and have cocktail tables set up in that space, then you might want to have some sort of arrangement for those cocktail tables as well. This can be just a small little bud vase, or I've done linens over the cocktail table with a garland to kind of tie it around, and that's a nice, simple, elegant look as well. So some sort of arrangement or florals during your cocktail hour on those cocktail spaces. This goes for the bar as well. A lot of couples will choose to have some sort of arrangement on the bar, whether again that is in a physical arrangement in a vase, or maybe some sort of greenery or swag actually like affixed onto the bar. However you choose to do that, usually couples will have some sort of florals tied into the bar. Going back inside, you will also have some sort of head table or sweetheart table florals that might be a little bit more accentuated than your guest tables. So usually if you have a head table and or a sweetheart table, the florals on that will be a little bit more elevated than what you have on the guest tables. So those are the main ones for the reception, and then you have some additional miscellaneous places that you could have florals, like if you have any lounge areas set up, having arrangements in these lounge spaces, or maybe you have a seating chart display that is going to include some sort of greenery or florals to decorate that up. Another place is if you have nice bathrooms on site, or if you're trying to dress up the bathrooms a little bit, having little arrangements in the bathrooms, or perhaps on food stations if you have designated food stations set up. So like I said, this is pretty much just a list of all of the flowers that you could include at your wedding. Doesn't mean that you need to include all of them, this to give you a kind of a baseline expectation for all of the things that you should budget for when it comes to your wedding florals, and what to expect when it comes to going into those wedding florist consults. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, please like and subscribe to get weekly videos on wedding planning tips and advice, and we'll see you next week.